Hey there, it is September 2nd, Wednesday, comic book day. As you can tell from the title, this video, part 1 of this week's reviews, are just the DC books I picked up this week. Next video, part 2, will have 2 Marvel books and an indie that I picked up, so if you're interested in those, wait for that part. But, like I said, this video is DC, so let us start with Omega Men, issue 4. And if you've been paying attention to these videos, you might realize that this is my first Omega Men book. I haven't read the previous 3 issues yet. I plan to pick up the trade when it comes out, but I wanted to start reading this as soon as possible because I heard it was really good. Tom King, who writes this, also writes Grayson, which I love, so I was really excited. I heard some really good things about this book, mainly that it was... Tom King was a federal agent, I believe. I read that somewhere. Like, he worked for the government. He was an agent of the U.S. government. And he brings a lot of that to Grayson, as you can probably tell. But also, this book is supposed to be, like, the terrorist versus anti-terrorist post 9/11 in comic book space. And I can sort of see the influence. I haven't read the previous 3 issues yet, but just from this issue, even though it doesn't have a lot to do with that, this is mainly a flashback issue, which I think makes it a good issue to jump in on. But I can see kind of where people are getting the, a DC comic for the post 9/11 world. Even though 9/11 was, 14 years ago, at this point, almost 14 years ago. 14 years ago in a week and a half or something. And it shouldn't have taken this long. I can definitely see how this is, why people are saying that. But like I said, this is a flashback issue. First of all, another thing just I wanted to point out, the cover's really cool. All of the covers have been like these very, graffitied over propaganda stuff. And this isn't so much propaganda as it is, like a take a vacation poster, a travel poster sort of thing. But it's still graffitied over with the Omega Men stuff. Anyway, we open with Green Lantern Kyle Rayner trapped, taken hostage on the Omega Men ship. He's in a cell with Princess Callista. Callista? That's her name. Let me get to the middle of the book where they say it. Callista. And they're trapped in the cell together in the Omega Men ship, kidnapped by them. The Omega Men are, from what I gather from this issue, they're terrorists. They are attacking the Citadel. And this could be, from what I'm gathering already, it's kind of in Star Wars, the Empire versus the Rebel. And the Omega Men are the rebels, but we're still not sure if they're the good guys, because they murder, citizens of the Citadel, or so I'm told in this issue. And they've kidnapped a Green Lantern. They kidnapped Kyle Rayner. And this book is flashback, kind of backstory to these characters. So we start with Kyle Rayner explaining how he became a Green Lantern and how he ended up where he is now, to Callista. And he very shortly goes through the whole kind of Kyle Rayner history, how he was chosen as a Green Lantern while the other Green Lanterns were away, or not away, rather. Well, if I remember my comic book history correctly, and if I don't, please correct me as violently as possible in the comments, Kyle Rayner became a Green Lantern during Zero Hour, during the Parallax event where Hal Jordan went crazy and started killing all the Green Lanterns. And so we cover that over here, how when there were no Green Lanterns left, Rayner was chosen, and how he lost his girlfriend in the event that coined the term fridging by Gail Simone. Kyle Rayner's girlfriend was chopped up and stuffed in a refrigerator by one of his enemies, Major Power, or... I think it's Major Power, Captain Major. It's a stupid name. It's a stupid villain. He's big and purple. The Grimace. and that's where we get the term pridging, and so we get a brief history of that. And I don't know, like, it's part of the reason I liked Kyle Rayner, but they really hammered home here, is there's a lot of, like, if this is your first Kyle Rayner story, there are a lot of parallels drawn between Kyle Rayner and Spider-Man in this book, in this, like, quick backstory here. Where Spider-Man's big thing is, with great power comes great responsibility. He never asked for his powers, but he got them, and now that he has the power, he is responsible to use it to help people. And Kyle Rayner does the very same thing, where he was chosen randomly, unlike the other Lanterns. He didn't have the courage, he didn't have the skills. It was nothing more than a flip of a coin. He says, and how now that he has his powers, he'd never have a normal life. And then they have, him losing his girlfriend because of his superhero life, just like Gwen Stacy. And yeah, they do everything except say, with great power comes great responsibility. Kyle Rayner says, I wasn't picked, I wasn't what anyone wanted, but I did the job, I chose to do the job. I have to do this, I have to save people, because if I don't, why? Yeah, and he discusses how he got to the solar system with the Omega Men, and how basically how he got here. And then after a bit of a twist in the middle, that changes how we see the rest of the story, which I'm not going to spoil. Princess Callista tells her backstory and how she wound up in the ship next to Kyle Rayner. And she tells how she was a warrior princess raised from birth in order to kind of keep these people oppressed, to keep these people under control, which meant a lot of murders, a lot of assassinations, a lot of beheadings, as you can see on this page. And it's all very interesting. She becomes a bit of a femme fatale character through this book. I'm really interested in Callista at the end of this book. Just what are her motivations? Why is she here? What is she doing on the Omega Men ship? What's her end game with Kyle Rayner here? So yeah, I'm really liking this book. It's very deep. I mean, there's a lot of not deep, dense. Rather, there's a lot going on. Even though seems like a very simple issue, they're setting up a lot. There's a lot going on in the background, that's mentioned in a couple pages that aren't flashback, and a lot of politics too, especially in Callista's part, where they take you on a tour of the solar system, the Vega system, where they are, and how each planet kind of is under control by the Citadel. And there's a great use of dramatic irony. In the middle of this book, we find out something about one of the characters that greatly changes, what we think of the rest of the story. It gives us insight that characters in the book don't have, and that is a narrative technique called dramatic irony. You should have learned about it in high school. If not, Google it. Dramatic irony. It's when the reader knows something that the characters in the story don't, and us waiting for them to figure it out is part of the climax. So, what's your example of dramatic irony? I'm trying to think of a really good example of dramatic irony. Shakespeare did it. Yeah, I guess in I'm trying to think of the Shakespeare example, and I can't do it. I mean, he uses it in every book, but I can't think of the big, without going into Shakespeare and explaining. Yeah, it's when you know something that the characters don't, and you're waiting to find out when they find out and see how they react. Anyway, yeah, I'm really liking Omega Men. I think it's very, very well constructed. I feel this is a good issue to jump in on, issue 4. If you haven't been reading from the start, if you can find issues 1 through 3, go ahead. But if you can't, I can't, start with issue 4, and I think it's dense, but it's not complicated enough where you get lost. It's very well presented. The art is a bit divisive. I can't tell if I quite like it yet. I do like the use of color. I like how everyone looks heroic. like just all the characters, no matter what their situation, they look heroic. Rainer, even though he's talking about how he's a coward and everything, has the broad shoulders and the strong chin and the hairdo and all that. Looks kind of pulpy, even. Oh wow! I just noticed that Kyle Rayner's shield is the Hyrulean shield, but with the Green Lantern sigil on it. But it even has the Triforce above it. I just noticed that looking through this book. That is really cool because Kyle Rayner's a nerd. But yeah, Omega Men, really like it. Can recommend it very easily. And that's 10 minutes on one book. Oh my god, we gotta move on. I have stuff to do. I still have more books to read. So moving on to Bat-Mite, issue number 4. In this one, Bat-Mite finally meets Booster Gold, who's been hanging around a couple issues or so. We start off with some domestic violence. Bat-Mite causing a ruckus, creating making a rift between him and his roommates. Before Booster Gold just kind of warps into the scene, appears in the doorway, and then the adventure happens. Booster Gold is trying to recruit Bat-Mite to help him deal with Gridlock, who we saw in the last issue, but Bat-Mite gets distracted trying to reinvent Booster Gold instead. There's some, I feel, clumsy and unnecessary background in this issue. They go through who Booster Gold is in his entirety, and I feel it takes a bit too long, and it's not really necessary to go through it in as much detail as they do. But yeah, eventually Bat-Mite transforms Booster Gold and makes him all dark and gritty. What else happens? I think the strongest character in this issue is probably Skeets, who's this guy, who's Booster Gold's little robot companion, because he works really well with Bat-Mite. He plays a really good straight man, where he knows how to play to Bat-Mite's ego and how to make Bat-Mite's kind of chaos work for him in a very good way. So they work together really well, comedically and narratively. As for the actual plot, it's light. It's light at the same time. It's the heaviest plot issue so far. And I don't think that works for this book. This book, it's a humor book. It's not really a plot humor book. It's let's put this character in a wacky situation, or let's put this wacky character in what should be a normal superhero book situation, and see how he does it. The ending feels a bit too sitcom-y, like a bit too okay. Let's wrap this up and make everything better by the end of the issue. Probably the weakest issue of Bat-Mite yet. Because it feels a little uneven. I think there's too much Booster Gold backstory. The ending feels a little like too well put together, too sitcom-y. And there's just not as many good gags, I feel, in this issue. But like I said, it is a limited series. I think there's only 2 left. So if you've been reading so far, I don't think you're wasting your time by picking this issue up. See, 3 minutes. That's how long it should take to review a book. Next up is Green Arrow number 44, and this is also a very weak issue in this run. Not also as in it's been a weak run, but I mean, like last issue was weak for Bat-Mite, this issue I feel is weak for Green Arrow. We open, and I don't like this opening. It feels like just an unnecessary wrinkle in the story. We open with Oliver having girl problems and saying how whenever he dates a girl, eventually they say, I don't feel like I know you, because he has to keep half of his life a big secret. And the whole romance thing, it doesn't really go anywhere, which is, I guess, the point. It just kind of, the girl is like bugging him, come on, tell me more about you, and Ollie can't because secret identity stuff. Eventually they stumble onto a fortune teller, and the fortune teller tells us the backstory of George, Oliver's wolf dog companion. And it's not as interesting as it should be. like we are getting the backstory of a very incidental character so far, a character who's important to this arc, but overall the story just like pretty much has just been introduced, hasn't had any lines, isn't much of a character yet, and yet we have this whole issue devoted. Okay, so here's where this dog comes from, and it's there's a wolf attack. Like just to briefly cover it, there's a wolf attack. A hunter comes to take care of the wolves. He spares the alpha wolf. They become companions, and then something involving a magic axe and people hunting the hunter, and it's really not that interesting. It's set up to be like this kind of like legend, like a kind of like a Native American folk tale or something like that, but it doesn't have the gravitas. It doesn't have. It's just not as interesting as like a backstory that takes up a whole single issue should be. Like it feels at first like it should be a metaphor, for something, and then you realize no, it's not a metaphor. Like this is just getting the backstory of this dog or whatever, and it just doesn't work. This issue doesn't really work. There's we get a new character introduced at the very end, who is like we see her silhouette in the beginning, but like it's just boom, I'm here now, I'm a character. I'm thinking it might just be a weak first issue in this arc. Like maybe next issue when this arc really kicks into gear, when we're in the present instead of the past, things will get better. But yeah, just not a good way to start an arc. Feels like exposition heavy, and then the exposition doesn't seem to matter all that much. So just kind of a sour taste left in my mouth after this issue for Green Arrow. And the last DC book I picked up this week is Batman Detective Comics issue 44. My store was out of the regular cover, but don't worry, here it is. Here's the cover. Anywho, this is the last issue of Detective Comics being done by Buccellato and the other guy Blanco by this creative team. Before it gets changed next month, it's Tomasi is on this book. He's writing Batman again, which I'm looking forward to. I tend to like his Batman stuff. But before we get to that, we have the final issue of this story arc with kind of Gordon and Harvey getting used to this new status quo of Robot Batman and all that. Last issue, we were introduced to a giant Joker robot. This issue, we see how Batman deals with the Joker robot. But that's kind of the B story. The A story being how Harvey deals with Yip and Montoya. He knows that Yip is a traitor, and he's trying to figure out, okay, how do I balance this in my life? How do I balance my relationship with Yip and my duty to the police force, to Batman and to Gotham City? So we find out exactly who Yip has been working for. It's Falcone, not Carmine. It's Stefano Falcone, or Falcone. We get like the first bunch of this book, or the big chunk of this first part of the book is Gordon fighting the Joker robot, and we get some pretty good action beats out of this. The robot we find out is, or I think we found out a few issues ago who's behind the robot, but it's Joker's daughter, and so we see how Gordon goes up against this robot, which is much bigger than his own, and now he, as you can see, makes it explode with microwaves. Pretty cool. It's a good action beat, but it feels very inconsequential because it's this one issue. It was set up for a while. You have this action beat. It feels over way too quickly. And of course, they have to wrap up the story because this is the final part of this arc, and they're not doing another one with the same creative team, so I can see why it is the way it is, but it still feels like Bat-Mite. It feels like too easily wrapped up. The Harvey story is a lot more interesting, and what saddens me about the change in creative team is that we're probably not going to get more Harvey in Detective Comics. It seems like because we're shifting over to the Batman for Gordon joining the Justice League in the next issue. But I do like how they end I do like how they end Harvey's story and finding out how Harvey works with Yip, works with Montoya, and does his best to kind of save everyone, to help Yip out with her situation, even though she's a traitor, to protect Gotham, deals with the circus and all that. And I really do like Harvey's character. I like his relationships with all the other characters, with all the other cops in the book. And I feel that his story wrap-up is a lot cleaner. Is just way better done. And I really am going to miss hanging out with Harvey Bullock in these books. The art, of course, is fantastic, as it's always been with this creative team. Really can't fault them for that. I already showed probably my favorite page. I love just like the lighting on this. I like Batman holding the car. It's really cool stuff, I feel. So yeah, a pretty good final issue. The arc overall, kind of underwhelming. But for a final issue, like I said, I like the Bullock fix. I like Harvey Bullock. I like how he solves this jam, how he resolves this conflict. And the Batman stuff is good action. It's not heavy, plot-wise, character-wise, it's meh. But action-wise, it's pretty cool looking. You have a robot fight, even though it's kind of short and handled, solved simply. It's still a robot fight, still very fun, very good art. So there we go with that. And that is it for the DC books I picked up this week. If you're interested in the Marvel stuff, Silk, Silver Surfer, and We Stand on Guard, which isn't Marvel, but I'm reading it anyway, because I am enjoying it, then that's going to be in part 2 of this week's review, so if you're interested in those, please watch that. But I want to thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, feel free to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you feel like it. I enjoy when people subscribe. Makes me feel better about doing them. Any comments, questions, anything whatsoever, please leave them below. I will get to them if I feel like I have an adequate response. And yeah, part 2 should be up very shortly. And I want to thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope that you will join me next week for more comic book reviews.